The Tigers draw. It was a game that had everything but a winner.
Does it magnificently. Elliott couldn't control it. Douglas's little gift to Bond. Here's a go. Bond to Maxfield. Go and kick the goal, Stewie. Straighten it up. Bang it home. It's a beauty.
The biggest comeback in history was recorded at the Gabba, as Brisbane came back from a 45-point deficit at three-quarter time to beat Hawthorn by 7 points in round 16. Young Michael Voss sensational. For the third year in a row, Gary Ablett kicked 100 goals, the oldest man to achieve the feat. The Geelong superstar kicked 7 against Sydney.
So Ablett for the century. He's got it. It's all over. And I think he's glad about it.
The goal-kicking performance of the year came a couple of weeks later when Tony Lockett kicked 16 straight against Fitzroy at the Western Oval. He might have broken the AFL record of 18, but for a misunderstanding that saw him taken from the field for a 10-minute rest late in the second quarter. In one 3-week spell, Lockett kicked 28 goals without a miss. Lee Matthews, the man who took Collingwood to the 1990 flag and was named coach for life at Victoria Park, was sacked in mid-August. His former Hawthorn teammate Peter Knights had been sacked by the Hawks on the same astonishing day of bloodletting. There would be a minute's silence prior to the round 20 matches as a mark of respect for the passing of Mr. Football Ted Whitten. We would watch as Fitzroy continued to self-destruct. Bernie Quinlan sacked as coach to be replaced by Alan McConnell. Doug Hawkins played his 350th and last game for Fitzroy. His old team Footscray had one to remember as the Dogs beat Geelong for only the 5th time at Cardinia Park in 50 years. Gary Ablett suspended on the eve of the finals for 2 weeks for charging Rowan Smith. The tribunal hearing took longer than the game. Stephen Kernahan captained Carlton for the 188th time, eclipsing John Nicholls' record as club leader. 88,000 saw the Blues finish on top of the ladder, the first team to win 20 home and away games, this time over Essendon. The Blues would go into the finals without the brilliant Greg Williams, who was suspended for a week for abusing umpire Goldspink. The Western Oval would be renamed the Whitten Oval, and it would be here that St Kilda's Danny Frawley would make an emotional farewell after 240 games. Ron Barassi too would end his term at Sydney, the master coach re-establishing the Swans as Sydney's team. Hawthorn would miss the finals for the first time in 14 years. Brisbane would beat Melbourne in the last game of the season to win a place for the first time at the Demons' expense. Sean Smith would take the mark of the year.
Good kick. Oh, what a mark! Mark of the year. Mark of the year in the last round. Now go on, KB. What do you reckon?
I reckon it was
that is the biggest leap since Modra 2 years ago.
The only upset in the first week of the finals was North Melbourne's victory over Richmond, engineered by Wayne Carey. With a 4-minute burst in the second quarter, he destroyed the Tigers.
Then Anderson. Anderson's kick is long towards half forward. Yes. Carey shoots for goal. Low trajectory. Yes, it's got the distance. It's got the accuracy.
Brisbane put up a remarkably strong showing in its first final, staying within 13 points of the reigning premiership favourites. For Robert Walls, it would be his last appearance as coach of the Bears. For the first time since 1944, Richmond met Essendon in a final. The Tigers coming back from a 30-point half-time deficit to win by 13. None more influential than acting skipper Matty Knights. None happier than John Northey. Once again, Glenn Jakovich would quieten Wayne Carey. But the first semi-final showed convincingly that the Roos were no one-man band as they beat the Eagles by nearly 10 goals. Just as Geelong had ended Richmond's unbeaten run during the season, the Cats, under Gary Ayres, stepped in and ended their finals dream in the first of 2 preliminary finals on September 24. Within a month, Northey would leave Punt Road and be appointed coach of Brisbane. That night, in a spiteful, hard-hitting match at the MCG, televised live into Melbourne and attracting a massive audience, Carlton stepped closer to the premiership by annihilating North.
Kudafides, can he balance up and kick it? It's low, it's close, he's got it! Wonderful!
Paul Kelly became the first man to win the Brownlow medal without having played for a Victorian-based club. The Swans captain won by 3 votes from Darren Jarman and by 4 votes from Gary Hocking. Kelly could only make the interchange bench in the All-Australian team, captained by Gary Ablett, who was chosen in the illustrious gathering for the 7th year. Greg Williams didn't make the All-Australian team, but on grand final day, he produced one of his great solo performances. He would kick 5 goals for Carlton, gather 31 possessions and win the Norm Smith medal to add to his pair of Brownlows. The Blues won their record 16th AFL Premiership by 10 goals, confirming their status as the best team of the year. Kernahan too kicked 5 goals and with David Parkin would collect the cup.
I think that the people have grown to accept the AFL because at one stage I wouldn't have thought they might have. But in the end, I think that they have, and I think the game's definitely prospered. There's no doubt about that. It's still the best sport, basically, in Australia, and it's got the best attendances of any sport in Australia. And I've just been very proud to be a part of it.
It was party time in 1996 as the AFL celebrated its centenary year. Fittingly, the whipping boys of that first VFL season back in 1897 should win a premiership. St Kilda winning the Ansett Australia Cup to collect the club's first silverware since that wobbly 1-point win 30 years earlier. There would be a team of the century named. Gary Ablett and Greg Williams named on the bench, and Stephen Silvani a controversial choice at fullback. Ted Whitten was named captain and Norm Smith coach. There was no argument there. There was a sameness about the season start. Ablett kicked 9. Matty Richardson came back from his knee operation as good as ever and kicked 6. And Adelaide coach Robert Shaw was in trouble for mouthing off at the umpires. He was open-mouthed the next week as the Jarmans kicked 14 goals against Fitzroy. Darren had joined brother Andrew in a delicate 8-man round robin that saw Paul Salmon become a hawk. Lockett kicked 8 in round 3 as Collingwood celebrated game number 2000. But a Darren Pritchard miss would cost Hawthorn dearly a week later at the Whitten Oval. The game ending in a draw.
Gentlemen, this is unbelievable stuff.
In April, we were saddened by the loss of former St Kilda captain Trevor Barker. One of the game's most popular champions was only 39 when he lost his long fight against cancer. St Kilda honoured him by naming the club best and fairest the Barker Trophy. In round 5, Brisbane took top spot on the ladder for the first time, defeating Fitzroy in a torrid encounter at the Gabba. But the game of the season might well have been Carlton's 1-point win over the West Coast at Optus Oval. Anthony Koutoufides putting his stamp on the result with 18 marks. Then again a week later, Essendon watched the 28-point lead evaporate in Sydney. Lockett kicked 8 and James Hird missed the chance to seal the victory. The draw would be a taste of things to come between these two sides in 1996.
He's got Cummings in the goal square. He can kick a long ball. He's going to go torpedo punt. Gets onto it. It's going and going and going, and he misses. It's a behind.
He was interested at centre bounce.
Scores are level.
Roger Merritt had been the inspiration for Brisbane's rise, and he would join the 300 club in May. In round 7, the AFL organised a reenactment round, with the original 8 teams in the VFL donning replicas of their old Guernseys as they replayed the games from round 1, 1897. Darren Buick kicked 9 for the Bombers against Geelong after 11 months on the sidelines with a knee reconstruction.
Gets out of the pocket, kicks, and he's kicked his 8th. Oh, the Buick's on fire.
A week later, the Lions' agony would end as they beat Fremantle in front of 5,000 people at the Whitten Oval. Their future looked horrid.
Finds the room, puts it through.
Perhaps the most remarkable story of the 90s centred on Dublin Jim. In round 9, Jim Stynes played his 205th